Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. Today we are continuing on with quote love unquote by New Amsterdam, and we are up to chapter 7. Kirishima-san! Everyone! Yaoyorozu is standing at the door to greet them, her long hair and long dress blown back by the sea breeze. She waves. I'm so glad you made it. Welcome! With a groan, the 4 members of Riot topple out of the car and onto the pavement in front of Yaoyorozu's summer home. A few days ago, booking a 2-day vacation to a remote seaside town had seemed like a great idea, but after playing a show last night and waking up before sunrise this morning to drive out, they're having second thoughts. I hope your drive was all right, Yaoyorozu is saying, coming towards them. It's only mid-morning, but she's styled to perfection. Her dress is turquoise and peach and white, the loose fabric conveying class and comfort all at once. Jiro's the first to recover herself. After stifling a yawn, she rubs a hand over her face. Yeah, it was great. Totally great. She stands a bit straighter, smoothing down her hair and trying to appear less than dead on her feet. Ashido and Kaminari nod in time. Thanks for the invite, Ashido says. And for sending the car. It's too much, you know. Yaoyorozu waves them off. Nonsense. The house is just sitting here otherwise, and there's room for everyone. Now come in. I've had breakfast laid out for all of you, and everyone else is inside. The omelet bar should take a moment to warm up, but we'll get you started with tea or coffee. She turns around to lead them inside, but the others linger for a moment before they follow her. The house looms in front of them, a massive structure that sits on the edge of the beach and casts a long shadow across the entire landscape. I feel like I got slapped in the face with how rich she is, Kaminari mutters ruefully. She's so cute about it, though. Ashido shakes her head. They go after Yaoyorozu, leaving Jiro on the curb with Kirishima. Just before they too follow the others inside, Kirishima hears Jiro mumbling under her breath. Some people really are just completely different from the rest of us, aren't they? There's not much time to linger on Jiro's words. Inside the house, a veritable feast of breakfast food has been laid out for them. Yaoyorozu is motioning them towards different options. Rice and fresh fish, a juice bar, fresh waffles and pastries. Ashido and Kaminari grab plates and start loading them, smiling at Yaoyorozu's enthusiasm. Kirishima piles his own plate with breakfast sausages and then pulls out a chair at the long table. The kitchen opens out onto a deck, with glass doors pulled open so the breeze and sunshine are let into the room. Soon enough, the others are joining him, and for a moment the 5 of them enjoy a companionable meal. And then, if you would just listen, I'm sure you would see the sense in my position, a loud authoritative voice says. It would be in your best interest, in addition to benefiting the careers of your peers. How many times do I have to tell you to get lost? Kirishima knows that voice well enough by now to expect it when Bakugou comes stomping into the kitchen. He's dressed for the beach, in black and red swim trunks and a familiar pair of expensive sunglasses hanging from the neck of his tank top. He's looking over his shoulder, incensed, but as soon as he turns around, he stops short. For a moment, he just stands in the doorway, staring at Kirishima. Then Sero and another dark-haired man crash into Bakugou, all 3 of them tumbling forward. Ashido throws her head back and laughs as the 3 men get back to their feet. It's Sero who recovers first and helps to detangle Bakugou and the other companion. Thank you, Sero-kun, the man says, straightening his thin-framed glasses. He's tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a track jacket over his beach attire. Kirishima doesn't recognize him, though he feels like he should. Both of you get away from me, Bakugou grounds out, sidestepping them and pulling out a chair next to Kirishima. He turns the chair around and sits in it backwards, reaching out to grab a piece of meat from Kirishima's plate. Hello to you too, babe, Kirishima says, rolling his eyes. You know, there's a whole spread of food, like, right there, right? The man in the glasses clears his throat. Bakugou-kun, are you going to introduce us? Bakugou looks back at him with a look of disgust. No. Kirishima elbows him in the side, then turns to the newcomer. I'm Kirishima. Nice to meet you. I've heard a lot about you, the man says, extending a hand for Kirishima to shake. I'm Ida Tenya. I'm an agent with Ingenium Talent, which you may have heard of. We've been interested in you all, Kirishima-kun. Your band's rise has been nothing short of meteoric, and I have to ask who's managing. He shows no sign of slowing down until Yaoyorozu gets to her feet and says, Ida-san, didn't we say that there would be no work talk this weekend? Ida steps back, abashed. Of course, I didn't mean. It wasn't his fault, Sero put in. I got him started, asking him to talk to Bakugou. We'll lay off now, Yaoyorozu. Promise. Talk to you about what? Kirishima asks Bakugou. Some bullshit. Bakugou mutters, and then reaches out and drains Kirishima's glass of orange juice. Kirishima raises a brow. You don't have to be a brat, he says casually. Besides, you shouldn't be grumpy anymore. Look, I'm here now. He means it as a joke. He doesn't really expect that Bakugou will be happier with him around, or that he was waiting for Kirishima to arrive. Honestly, he's found that the only way he can really play at being Bakugou's boyfriend is if he turns all of it, the affection and familiarity, into a joke with himself. But then Bakugou surprises him. He scoffs. Yeah, only after sticking me with these losers for a day. Kirishima grins despite himself. Sorry? Ida-kun, have you seen... Again, from the hallway, Kirishima hears a voice before he sees who it belongs to. But before he has a chance to recognize the person, they let out a gasp and run towards him. Kirishima-kun, you made it! Uraraka is suddenly in front of him, grabbing both of his hands and smiling widely. I'm so glad you're here, she says before she spots Bakugou and suddenly turns indignant. Is this why you ran away? You were coming to meet Kirishima-kun? Bakugou leans forward in his chair, staring Uraraka down. So what? You're impossible, she tells him, and turns to Kirishima. He's impossible. Kirishima nods sagely. Believe me, I know. The kitchen is open enough not to feel crowded, even as the newcomers grab their own plates of food and pull up chairs around the table. They go through introductions, and it's only Bakugou who holds himself back from the laughter and conversation. He's not doing much of anything until the last members of the group arrive. Todoroki and Midoriya come into the kitchen together. They're talking in low voices, but stop when they realize how many people are gathered in there. Kaminari, Jiro, and Yaoyorozu are talking on one side of the table, Ashido and Uraraka between them, and Bakugou and Kirishima. Ida and Sero complete the circle, with Sero across from Ashido and next to Kaminari. Everyone's here, Midoriya says, smiling brightly. It's good to see you again, Kirishima-kun. Kirishima has never been able to quite label the nature of Midoriya's appeal. He doesn't have Bakugou's fierce good looks or Todoroki's sculpted beauty, but there's something so warm and open about his face, a kindness and sincerity that radiate through everything he does. The world had fallen in love with Midoriya Izuku through Yue and his character Daiki, and now, being in the same room as him, it's impossible not to see why. He's a person who lights up a room with his very presence. Midoriya's gaze drifts back to Bakugou and Kirishima, his brow furrowing slightly as he takes in the sight of Bakugou leaning across Kirishima to steal food off his plate. Dude, Kaminari says, looking up. We watched your entire show in like 4 days. It was amazing. Midoriya's cheeks turn a bit pink, but he and Todoroki go over and sit with Kaminari on his side of the table. Before they can get settled, Bakugou kicks his chair back from the table with an audible slide across the wood-paneled floor. He gets to his feet without looking at anyone, then stomps back out of the kitchen. Midoriya watches him leave, the smile frozen on his face. Uraraka frowns after Bakugou. Honestly, she murmurs, I wanted them to talk this out before everyone got here. Kirishima doesn't ask her to clarify. Instead, he gets up and follows Bakugou out of the kitchen, waving his apologies at the rest of the group. It doesn't take him long to find him. The house is wide and open. The rooms blend into each other, many of them connected just by doorways. Bakugou is in a sitting room, standing up and staring out at the ocean through the massive glass panels. Kirishima steps up beside him. If they were in public, maybe he'd feel comfortable touching Bakugou, resting his hand on his shoulder or his hip, grabbing his hand. But without any eyes on them, Kirishima doesn't have the excuse to do any of those things. "Hey," he says when Bakugou doesn't acknowledge his presence for a moment. "Is this okay? I know I asked you to come, but if you really can't stand it, you should have told me."
"It's fine."
Bakugou grits out. His hands are clenched at his sides. Kirishima doesn't believe him. From what Uraraka had told him, from what Bakugou himself had said, Kirishima figured that this outing would be good for him, that he'd have a chance to be among his not friends again in a relaxed way, and that they'd maybe be able to mend some broken fences. But Bakugou doesn't even want to try. "I don't want you to be miserable for the next 2 days," Kirishima says, brow furrowing.
"He's gonna figure it out."
Bakugou spits out. "What?"
"Deku,"
Bakugou hisses, his voice going low.
"He's a fucking... he notices everything. He can't know that we're in a bullshit relationship."
Bakugou's facial expression barely changes, but the crease between his brows deepens. He's genuinely concerned about this. "Why? I mean, Ashido and the others know, so it wouldn't..."
"It would ruin everything,"
Bakugou says, his voice so fierce and insistent, and Kirishima immediately believes him. Bakugou wouldn't care this much if Midoriya didn't represent an actual threat to what Bakugou was trying to do. "Okay," he says, "it's fine, we've practiced. No one is gonna figure it out. Everyone thinks we're dating, it's fine." Bakugou opens his mouth to respond, but then freezes when they both hear footsteps just outside the room.
"Fuck."
Bakugou growls, then grabs Kirishima by the neck of his t-shirt and pulls him forward, covering his mouth in a wet, sloppy kiss. It's been a few days since they were last together, but Kirishima remembers how to respond to these kisses. For a moment, he just shuts his eyes and lets himself lean into it. Bakugou reaches up a hand and tugs on Kirishima's ponytail, carding his fingers through Kirishima's loose hair. "Bakugou-kun, Kirishima-kun..." Uraraka's voice is lost in a squeak as she enters the room. "I'm... sorry to interrupt." The last words come in a rush, and Kirishima feels Bakugou's lips pull into a smile against his just before he lets Kirishima go. Kirishima sucks in a breath, smoothing out his hair and trying not to look disappointed that the kiss is over.
"What the fuck are you doing walking in on us?"
Bakugou growls, sounding honestly indignant. "I didn't mean to," Uraraka says, waving her hands in front of her. "Besides, you could have found a room with a door." "You were looking for us?" Kirishima asks. He smiles, but it feels strained. That was one way to keep their cover, he supposes, but a little warning would have been nice. "We're going down to the beach," Uraraka says, voice returning to a normal range, even though her face is still red. "And I don't care how in love you guys are, Bakugou-kun isn't allowed to keep you all to himself." She grabs Kirishima by the arm and tugs him forward, Bakugou rolling his eyes as he falls into step with them. Uraraka's chatter carries them through the house to the others, but the entire time Kirishima is distracted. Whatever Bakugou wants from this weekend, from him in general, Kirishima can deal with it. As long as he gets to be close to Bakugou, he's willing to play along. Time passes. It takes a few minutes to gather everyone up to head down to the beach. Yaoyorozu takes the lead, walking with Jiro and Ashido and pointing out the various points on the horizon to them. Bakugou walks more or less with Todoroki and Midoriya, and Ida bringing up the rear of the group with Sero and Kaminari. Kirishima and Uraraka end up in the middle of the crowd. "It's a private beach," Uraraka explains. "Honestly, I'd never been to one before Momo-chan started inviting us here. I was in Hawaii last week with my parents, and we went to a public resort. I sometimes like that better, but at home it's impossible. One of us alone would be recognized, so all of us together is basically impossible." Kirishima winces sympathetically. I only end up in the tabloids when I'm with Bakugou, but even that's a bit weird. Uraraka hooks her thumb into the pockets of her jean shorts. Her pink swimsuit leaves her shoulders bare, and she's tied up her hair so that the dotting of freckles across her shoulders and the back of her neck is visible. I've seen those pictures, you know. She smiles shyly at him, and Kirishima shifts with embarrassment. He'd mentioned the tabloids without thinking, and he knows Uraraka doesn't mind his relationship with Bakugou, but it's still awkward. She played his love interest for 5 years, and then they'd been thought of as a real-life couple for longer than that. Surely, if anyone was going to discover their secret, it'd be her. I feel like I should apologize, Kirishima says. I mean, I didn't mean for it to come out without warning to you. That day at Hagakure's party, you must think I was trying to fool you or something. Uraraka waves her hands, flustered. Of course not. To be honest, it happened at almost the perfect time. I take my parents to Hawaii every year at the same time. I didn't wake up to a media ambush or something. Ida-kun handled the press while I was out of the country, and I didn't have to deal with it at all. Kirishima feels a bit better about that. He hadn't been ambushed by the media himself, but he imagines that's because Bakugou's the real draw to the story. No one really cares about Kirishima Eijirou, rhythm guitarist and lyricist of Riot. Even the fame Riot is gaining from the relationship is just that, a new hype around the band rather than Kirishima himself. As though she senses his discomfort, Uraraka nudges Kirishima with her elbow and pitches her voice low. It's okay, she says conspiratorially. I'm happy you and Bakugou-kun have found each other. You really like him, right? She says it as though it's a given. She'd seen them kissing, and to her they probably seemed like a young couple caught at the height of passion, and, foolish as it is, Kirishima wouldn't call that a lie, at least not on his end. I really do, he says with a quiet intensity. I really like... Oh! They've stopped a ways down the beach. Everyone's setting down umbrellas and towels and bags. Bakugou has wasted no time in shedding his shoes and stripping off his tank top, but he pauses when he feels Kirishima's eyes on him.
You do a hell of a lot of staring,
Bakugou says, voice sharp and satisfied, like he likes having Kirishima watching him. Kirishima swallows roughly, dragging his eyes from Bakugou's abs up to his face. Play it cool, he thinks. Act natural. I'm allowed to, aren't I? He says, then resists the urge to smack his hand against his forehead. What a stupid line. Bakugou scoffs, turning away.
Whatever. We're racing out to the island. You coming or what?
Kirishima blinks and looks around. Midoriya and Todoroki have also stripped down to their trunks. Midoriya stretching out his arms and Todoroki waiting with a staid calm beside him. No one else? Kirishima asks, glancing around. Uraraka rolls her eyes. Bakugou-kun wants to race because Tsuyu-chan isn't here to wipe the floor with him. It's better not to indulge him, Kirishima-kun. It's more trouble than it's worth, Sero says, laying out on the sand. It won't stop with the race, Kirishima. You're going to be proving how strong or fast you are for the rest of the day. Kirishima lets out a chuckle. That sounds pretty fun, actually.
Then get a fucking move on,
Bakugou says, heading for the waves. His trunks sit low on his hips, revealing the shape of his hip bones. Kirishima sighs a little, out of appreciation, probably. You're on. Time passes. The island is really a collection of large rocks, some meters out from the beach. By the time he reaches it, Kirishima knows he's coming fourth in the race. Bakugou and Todoroki had sped ahead almost immediately, and Kirishima had kept pace with Midoriya until the end. Now he staggers onto the rock and sees Todoroki and Midoriya lying out against it. There isn't much space left, and Kirishima edges around Todoroki's head and tries to avoid stepping on anyone's outstretched arms. Bakugou is sitting on the edge of the rock, legs dangling into the water. There's no place for Kirishima here. Not just physically, but the three of them. They've known each other for so long. They became famous together. They grew up into a world where everyone knows who they are. Even though Bakugou had yelled something about Midoriya only being allowed to come because he'd lose, there was still a natural rhythm to that. Why did Kirishima ever think he could fit here?
Oi, hair for brains.
Bakugou snaps at him.
What are you doing?
He doesn't gesture overtly, but Kirishima follows his gaze to the stretch of rock left between him and Midoriya. Kirishima breaks into a grin and then sits between them, heaving a bit as he catches his breath. Who won? He asks when his lungs stop burning.
This candy cane fucker cheated.
Bakugou growls, reaching out to shove Todoroki. Todoroki barely blinks as he edges out of Bakugou's reach. Instead of denying it, he rolls gracefully off the rock and into the water, causing a splash that drenches Bakugou from head to toe.
Fucker,
he repeats viciously before diving into the water to engage in a water war. He chases after Todoroki in the water, sending up splashes like watery explosions. Next to Kirishima, Midoriya laughs. His dark green hair is flattened by the water, making his eyes look even larger. Kirishima chuckles himself. Are they always like that? Midoriya rolls over to face Kirishima. Not always. Kachan's been a lot happier than usual lately. I think Todoroki-kun finds him easier to deal with when he's not upset about something. Kirishima wonders if this is what Bakugou is like when he's happy. It must show on his face because Midoriya cocks his head to one side and gives Kirishima an assessing look. You probably already know this because you and Kachan are dating, but it's hard to get how he actually feels out of him. After this morning, I thought he was mad at me, but right now it feels like how it used to be when we were kids. Something about his tone makes Kirishima think that he's not talking about being 15 years old and on the set of UA. How long have you guys known each other? Midoriya rolls up to a sitting position, legs crossed as he holds onto his ankles. Forever, really. We grew up in the same neighborhood. I know what I'm talking about when I say Kachan is happy right now. Kirishima looks out at Bakugou, still splashing around in the ocean as Todoroki stays just beyond his reach. Bakugou's eyebrows are narrowed dangerously, cutting a sharp line into his face, but he's smiling. There's a fierce glint in his eye, and the bright sun shines off the white of his teeth. It's unfair how beautiful he looks in that moment. It reminds Kirishima of the barely contained sensuality of the Best Jeanist billboard, of the brooding depth of emotions that Nobuhiko showed on UA. Everything Bakugou does, he does with complete commitment and deep intensity. He really is talented, isn't he? Kirishima mumbles, idle thoughts escaping him. Midoriya puffs up with something like pride. Kachan's the most talented person I know, he says honestly. Definitely the best actor I've ever met, even though he can be kind of a jerk about that. But there's no denying it. Of course, Kirishima has always known that. Bakugou is an unfairly talented actor. He is so very, very good at what he does. And right now, he's playing a role out in his real life. He's worried about Midoriya finding out the truth, and so he's acting the part with perfect subtlety. Kirishima knew all this, has always known it. So why does it hurt to remember it now? They let the sun dry the water off their backs until Bakugou demands another race back to shore. It's harder to tell the standings when they stumble onto the beach, exhausted.
Can we take a break now?
Todoroki asks, voice barely inflected.
Fine,
Bakugou concedes.
But after lunch, we're deciding a championship once and for all. Kirishima, we better fucking win.
We, like he and Bakugou, are a team in this together. Kirishima doesn't know when Midoriya and Todoroki became their enemies, but that's hardly important. Duh, he says, wringing the water out of his ponytail. We'll be the ultimate champions. While they've been gone, the others have laid out a picnic lunch. Bentos are stacked on one blanket, which is laid in a patchwork with several others to make room for everyone to sit. Sero is manning a cooler, handing out sodas and beer. Kirishima takes a can gratefully, sipping on his drink as he takes a seat. Kirishima sits next to Bakugou with his lunch, with Ashido on his other side. Jiro and Yaoyorozu are next to Ashido, everyone else arranged in similar small groups. Kirishima doesn't expect Ida to grab his bento and come to sit beside him and Bakugou. Hello again, Kirishima-kun. he says, sitting with a strange sort of formality. Bakugou shoots him a glare, but otherwise ignores him in favor of methodically shoving rice into his mouth. Yo, Kirishima says, you guys have fun on land? Of course, Ida says with a smile. But besides that, I wanted to thank you. For what? Kirishima has never met Ida before today. He doesn't know what the guy would have to thank him for. Ida casts a significant look in Bakugou's direction. I believe we can credit you with making this a complete reunion, he says. Midoriya-kun and Uraraka-kun may not say so, but this means a lot to them, and so we are grateful to you. Gratitude is an uncomfortable burden, especially when unearned. Kirishima smiles in a strained way under the weight of Ida's matter-of-fact thanks. I didn't do anything, he tries to protest. Bakugou lets out an irritated huff.
I wouldn't be here if you weren't.
And maybe that is true. Kirishima had asked Bakugou over and over if he'd consider going, and part of that was Kirishima's selfishness. He wanted to go, to spend time with Uraraka, who'd invited him so kindly, to get to know these people who shine like bright lights in a cityscape. And he'd also been meddling, wanting Bakugou to reconcile with his own friends because Kirishima thought that would be best for them all. Ida tilts his head to one side, considering the space between Kirishima and Bakugou, and nodding to himself. Just as I thought. Anyone who Bakugou-kun would start a relationship with would surely be a very special person. Not really, Kirishima says. I'm just a normal guy. Bakugou rolls his eyes and stabs at his lunch more viciously than is strictly necessary. In any case, Ida says, I believe you are a good influence. Has Bakugou-kun spoken to you about the movie he's been offered? Not exactly, Kirishima almost says, but around a bite of lunch he recalls, the one that Midoriya is going to be in? He casts a worried glance in Bakugou's direction, but he doesn't react. Ida nods again. Actually, Uraraka-kun, Midoriya-kun, and Todoroki-kun are all signed on. I represent all three of them, and the director and producers agree that if Bakugou-kun were in the movie as well, the value of the production would skyrocket. Kirishima can just imagine. The 4 UA alum haven't worked together since the show wrapped. Todoroki and Bakugou were both in Ground Zero, and Uraraka and Midoriya have done a project or two together. But this would be a true reunion. I don't think he really cares about that, Kirishima says honestly. Midoriya has gotten up from his side of the picnic, going around the group with a bag of popsicles and single-serve ice cream. When he gets to Ida, Bakugou, and Kirishima, he pauses. He passes Ida an ice cream, then bites down on his lower lip like he's mulling something over. You know, Kachan, he says softly, it's not for any of the press stuff that All Might wants you on this one. Now Bakugou does react. His eyes flick up to Midoriya's, and he sneers.
You still fucking call him that? Grow up, Deku.
Red rises in Midoriya's cheeks, but he looks indignant rather than embarrassed. That's not the point. Bakugou reaches out and grabs the bag of desserts from Midoriya. Rifling through until he finds something he wants, he throws the bag back in Midoriya's face.
If Yagi wants me in his stupid movie, he can ask me himself.
It's when Bakugou says the name that Kirishima finally makes the connection. Yagi Toshinori, the highest paid actor in history, a star of the multiple installment All Might series of superhero films. He had retired after a long-term illness that had taken him out of the game for several years. He'd resurfaced just a few years ago, returning not to acting, but directing. And Midoriya has had considerable roles in his last 2 movies, both of which were runaway successes. Holy shit, Kirishima said. Yagi Toshinori wants you in his movie? That's amazing. Bakugou scowls at him.
It's not that goddamn special.
Midoriya frowns like he's about to take issue with that. You say that like you know for sure. I'm not even a film guy, and I know that Yagi is like next level. Kirishima forgets that he's supposed to be acting the supportive boyfriend. He thinks about watching a movie with UA's complete cast directed by a legend. He couldn't have dreamed up anything better.
Because I do.
Bakugou growls, biting into his popsicle. Kachan was in the 7th All Might movie. Midoriya puts in helpfully. It was his first role when we were 4 years old. They used to bring it up sometimes when we did interviews for UA. That rings a bell, albeit vaguely. Kirishima had paid attention to those interviews, but had taken it as a given that UA was Bakugou's breakout role. Now he wonders, with a strange sort of fascination, what Bakugou was like as a 4-year-old actor. From a few feet away, the picnic erupts with noise. Kaminari is sitting cross-legged on a blanket, surrounded by Eijiro, Ashido, and Sero. Sero is leaning over Kaminari's shoulder to point something out on a phone screen that they're all glued to. No way! Kaminari shrieks. He's so cute! Bakugou's head whips to the side, eyes roaming over Kaminari and the others until they come to rest on Sero.
Soy sauce, you better not have.
Sero looks up and smiles guiltily. Too late. Kirishima! Ashido calls out. Come and look at this! She waves the phone at him. Kirishima goes, even though Bakugou makes a strangled sound of protest. Ashido holds out the phone to him, on which an old movie trailer is playing on loop. Most of it is action shots and explosions. Yagi Toshinori in his prime, golden hair and bulging muscles, and unflappable smile. But then, amongst the clips of Yagi's character All Might punching his way through walls, is a small boy. He's being grabbed by a shadowed figure, crying as he's ripped out of All Might's arms. When the title card comes up, it ends on a scene of the boy reaching out for All Might's hand. It's Bakugou, his features unmistakable even without his trademark scowl. His pale blonde hair is like a dandelion fluff, his expression open and genuine and heart-wrenching. Kaminari is barely holding back his laughter. I can't believe it! He wheezes. He's so grumpy all the time, but look at him! He's like a little angel! What the hell? The others are covering their faces in their hands, smothering their laughter and cooing over the image of Bakugou as a small child. Behind him, Kirishima hears another strangled noise as Bakugou steps up and wrenches the phone out of his grip.
Shut the fuck up!
He seethes, holding the phone in a painfully tight grip. Are they making fun of Kachan? Midoriya asks, in the world's least subtle whisper to Ida. Ida nudges his glasses up his nose and nods.
It would appear so.
We're not saying anything bad, Ashido says to Bakugou. You were cute, and Kirishima definitely needs to see this as your boyfriend. Bakugou squeezes the phone so hard they all hear it crack. Dude! Kaminari says, that's my phone! Bakugou chucks it back at him, then stalks away. He wrenches up one of the free blankets and makes his way up the beach away from the rest of the group. Huh, Midoriya says, like he can't quite process what he just witnessed. Kirishima jogs up the beach to join Bakugou. He's laid out the blanket and is now sitting on it, knees up against his chest as he stares out at the ocean. Nudge over, Kirishima says to him, coming to sit beside him.
If you say anything.
Bakugou starts, but Kirishima cuts him off. What? I'm gonna make fun of you for being a professional actor when the rest of us were still in the playpen? He laughs at how ludicrous the thought is. You know, I've known you were pretty cool for a while, but I had no idea you were so young when you got started. The scowl is etched across Bakugou's face, like carvings into stone.
We're not fucking talking about this.
Kirishima doesn't bother pointing out that Bakugou had not made good on that statement in the past. Instead, he sits cross-legged on the blanket with Bakugou, watching the gentle ebb and flow of the waves against the sand. Bakugou doesn't say anything for several long moments, but he doesn't tell Kirishima to leave, even as he leans back to lie down against the sand. The sunlight catches on his pale hair, making it stand out stark gold, almost like Yagi Toshinori's. Kirishima doesn't know how long he sits there watching Bakugou, but it's long enough to notice when the tension eases out of his limbs, when his eyes flutter closed as he falls asleep. The sun is warm against Kirishima's face, and he thinks Bakugou has the right idea of it, The blanket is big enough for both of them, so Kirishima lies back and lets the rhythm of the waves lull him. He's half asleep already when Bakugou lets out an incoherent mumble and rolls over, closing the last bit of distance between them. They're both still bare-chested from their swim, salt and sand dried on their skin. But even so, it's natural and comfortable to drape an arm across Bakugou's chest, to let his hand rest at the nape of Bakugou's neck. Kirishima can feel Bakugou's breath against his cheek, imagines his heart beating in time to the waves. All right, friends, thank you so much for joining me for Chapter 7. The song for this chapter is Family Friend by The Vaccines. I hope that you guys enjoyed this one. I love the beginning of the beach little bit. Next chapter, Chapter 8, is continuation of the beach. So I hope that you guys will come back and join me for that. And if you do, then I'll see you next time.